You know we're live.
We are.
We're live. It's got red up there.
It's got red up there. It says we're live.
I thought red means stop.
It's good.
All right. Thanks for not being on your phones and stuff. That's fantastic.
Yeah, Anastasia.
No, I'm fully present.
Are you there?
Yeah.
So what is the point of this?
Well,
To review your work.
Oh,
I want to learn.
let's not do that.
I want to learn some stuff.
All right.
we're actually going to critique your videos.
Okay. So what are we starting with?
Well, I
Let's have a
don't.
look at your latest 2 minute stocks.
Well, there was a 2 minute stop that we had in mind.
You're going to have to talk up. There's only one microphone. You've got to make sure people can hear you.
I think everyone can hear us.
Can you hear me?
Well, there's no one watching.
Everyone's got high quality.
That's what I was trying to get involved. Maybe I
everyone's
was going to watch.
Anna, what would Anna's going
We're live. I was
Anna's going to
Okay.
do audio
So
for
which
us.
one do you want to look at first? What are you looking at?
Okay. Well, let's have a look at that one. Let's play that. So let's play
That's the
this.
second one. If you look at the other one, it's number one.
Okay. Well, let's go to number one.
G'day. Today I want to talk to you. Well, in fact, I want to ask you a question. If you have sold your house for twice the money you paid for it, have you actually made any money? So let me ask you this. If you bought a house for $500,000, say 15 years ago, and then this year you sell it for $1 million, have you made any money? Well, the first answer is like, yeah, sure, I made 500 grand. Well, have you really, right? And I keep asking you that question because I want you to think. If you bought something for 500 grand 15 years ago, you had a few choice of houses for 500 grand and you chose the one that you chose. Then you come fast forward 15 years later and you sell it for $1 million. Well, what are your choices now for $1 million? Is your house next door $1 million, just like it was 500,000 15 years ago? What is the value of that $1 million now? What does it get you? Because the numbers on a page or the numbers on a contract are irrelevant to what the money actually gets you in the market at that time. If you can measure the value of your house as the value of your house, right? So back 15 years ago, you could get your house for 500 grand. That's one house value. Now you sell it for $1 million. That's one house value. Have you outperformed the market? Could you sell your home and get equivalent homes for like 2 or 1.5 house values? Because that's the only true measurement. Other than that, it's fake. It's fake economy. It's a wealth effect. You think you're wealthy, but you're not. What's actually happened is that the market has moved in its pricing, but the value of your home is still one house value. That's the sort of thing that you need to look at when you come to sell. It's very easy to get caught up in the fact that, oh, look, I'm going to have all this money, and then you go to rebuy, and in fact, you're short. And don't laugh, we've seen it happen. I'm Scott.
All right.
Okay.
What do you want to know?
Well-
Here you go.
Okay. Well, that sounds all good, but
What sounds good about that?
I mean, well, that's the thing, right? So we get our property revalued at a higher value, and I suppose what you're saying there is you actually made nothing at all.
So we're talking about selling. So it's the perception that when someone has doubled their house price, doubled their value of their property in 5, 10, 20 years, whatever it is, and they've made that much money. The argument is that have they made that much money? Have they gone from 500 to $1 million? Or have they simply really just maintained their position in the market? Therefore, their $500,000 10, 15 years ago would be the equivalent of buying a property for $1 million now, so they actually haven't made any money at all.
No, it's just because the value of that money is higher. But of course, over that period of time, everything's gone up. Let's say the cost of the cars doubled in price as well.
That's right. So
The cost of groceries have doubled as well.
the price of goods and services and property has increased, but the value of money has dropped.
Yeah,
That's the difference.
yeah,
So your value of money is actually halved in that point in time, as opposed to the asset increasing.
yeah.
So the asset looks like it increases because we don't measure it in house values. How many houses with my 500,000 can I buy?
Yeah,
Can I buy one, right? And if I outperform the market and do really well in 10 years' time, can I buy 1.5 or 2 houses equivalent with what I've done with my house? Highly unlikely, but sometimes it happens. So what we measure against is dollars. So we think dollars don't change and everything else does change, when in reality, that's not actually the case. what changes is everything else.
Mm-hmm.
That we think everything changes, but what actually changes everything about money changes. And so we're stuck measuring with dollars and cents when in reality they're the things that are changing.
But is there a situation where that's not applicable? So, for instance, if you move from one area to another area and you bought your house for 500, you sell it for $1 million, then you move to another area and that house value is only $500,000.
Sure.
So now you can buy 2 houses in that area where there's the $500,000, right? So I suppose does it work in that sense if you're moving to a cheaper area to live across the country?
Yeah, it does. So that's essentially following the ripple. So if you know the ripple effect where it sort of lands in the coastal areas or capital cities or wherever, and you drop the rock above them and the ripple goes out. And so you experience a gain in, say, a capital city area, and then you sell in that area and you move a bit out, and then you go, oh, cool, I've made money. Or I can buy 2 houses from a one, and then it might go again, and you can go further out and do it again. So that's kind of following that ripple effect.
Until you end up at Ayers Rock or something.
Yeah, until you end up at Winton, and it's barely changed value in 40 years.
Yeah. So it can work, but when you're staying, what you're saying is if you're staying in the same place, like let's just say you live in Sydney and you make double the value and then you move to another house in Sydney, you actually haven't made anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you maintain your position in the market, which is better than losing your position in the market.
Yeah.
And so, but besides all that, that's just a practical outworking of what actually happens. The mindset is more of the problem. The problem is that look how much money I've made.
Yeah.
Well, the argument is that you haven't made any.
Yeah.
Okay, and so what happens is then people spend accordingly, and that's where you broach across into that wealth effect. So I've bought my house for $1 million, now it's worth $2 million. I'm a multi-millionaire.
Yeah.
Look what I can do.
Yeah.
Well, you can go and buy another $2 million house. Big whoop, because we all know, like in Sydney, Melbourne, and some parts of Brisbane, that's like what sort of house that is, right? That's not exactly an old style mansion anymore.
No.
So that doesn't actually make you wealthy.
No. So the question I've got there is, can you use your property, your dwelling, and we're not talking about investment properties, but like your own property, can you use that as an investment to, gain equity or gain wealth through your own property, or are you kind of suggesting that you kind of can't?
Yeah, so there's only 2 ways to do that, I think, that I can immediately think of in your own property. One is that if your own property has a material change of use attached to it, or you have a view to do that. And that can be your own property is something that you're going to cut up down the track.
Yeah.
And so then it's really not the same thing. It's not. It's no longer that property. It's something different.
Yeah.
And so you are creating a value that way.
Yeah.
The other way to do it is to have more than one property footprint. And so if you're only ever in your principal place of residence and you move within a market and you're not missing the market ups and downs and you're just in the market, it will just perform as it does, depending on your area and what have you. The way to outperform the market in general is to have more properties in there. And by that, I mean that they're all still performing within the market, but now you're not relying on your own home to be your wealth creation.
Sure.
The other properties are. So if you have 3 or 4 properties in the market, then those other 3 investment properties have grown, and it doesn't matter whether you're going to keep them or flip them or whatever. They do what they do, and your own house sits here, and you're just in the market. So you can be in the market more by having more properties.
Sure. So I suppose if you go into that investment realm, so let's say you buy an investment property for $500,000, and that becomes the value of $1 million later on, right? And your loan was, let's say it was $300,000, you had $200 to put in. So now you've paid off that loan. You might only owe $100,000 on it, but now the value of that house is $1 million, right?
Yeah.
So you've obviously got some capital gains in there and everything. You have to pay your taxes if you do go to sell that, but then your rental is going to increase as well. So are you gaining in that aspect as well, or is it the same? Does the same thing apply to like your own property? Have you actually made any money out of an investment property, even though that's increased in value and the rent's increased in value? Have you actually making money there?
Yeah. So that's going to depend on which way you look at it. The simple answer is highly likely yes. When you talk about your own home, whether you've had an 80% debt on it or 100% debt or no debt over time, you still need somewhere to live. And so your measurement of your wealth shouldn't really be based around that one thing, because you're going to need a roof over your head. Now, could you downsize when you're older and you want to do that? Yes, you can. And then you can cash in, but then you're now positioning yourself in that downsized market which is not a problem, but just it's still the same. It's just positioning, right? When you look at investment property, it's outside of your need for a dwelling. And so therefore is why it becomes an investment and why that your own home is both not an investment and an investment.
Yeah.
It's not an investment, your own home, because you need a place to live. But you need to look at it through the eyes of investment because it's in a market that is highly active with investors.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And you don't treat it that way, but you need to understand the fundamentals around that.
Yeah.
And so when you go to an investment property, it's kind of like now got tentacles, right? Your investment property are tentacles out into the market, and they're doing things that your own home couldn't do because it's doing what it does. It just sits there. Now, those properties are just sitting there. The difference is that you don't need to have them there. So at some point when you want to retire and you just say you never move out of your own home, it's like the perfect place, you can live there till you die, then you don't need those investment properties. So therefore you can withdraw from the market, that position in the market, and withdraw from it. And by withdraw, I mean take your tentacle out and the money associated with it.
Sure.
And all of a sudden now you've got a pool of cash here that you didn't have because you haven't changed your own home.
Yeah.
You can't get cash out of your own home unless you do it through debt or downsizing. Right?
Yep. Yeah, so it's really like a bit of a bank, really, or a superannuation account.
Yeah, well,
in
let's
a
put it
sense.
now. Now, the flip side of that is if you rely on the income from those properties in 20 years to provide you an income in retirement, well, then you don't want to withdraw them from the market. Right? So in that sense, the value of them is also then not important. What's important is the return from them. And you should have structured your portfolio with that in mind when you need to do it.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important when you go into buying the properties that you have an understanding of what they need to do. So every property on purpose for a purpose.
Yeah.
And that's why we talk about that.
Yeah. What do you think, Anna?
I'm still processing it all. I'm still processing it all. Yeah. No, he's raised some valid points, though, and it's definitely, the wealth effect, something that I wasn't really thinking about until he actually did that 2 minutes tops.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's kind of like you got to think about what you do. You can't just go out and randomly buy an investment property and just hope for the best. Like you said, what did you say before?
It is a mindset
all
thing.
properties for
Every property on purpose for a purpose.
on purpose for a purpose. So that's what percentage of people don't even think about that. It'd be quite a high
I would
percentage.
assume it's a very high percentage.
Very high percentage. And the problem is with the way that the money system works, which is you need more than a 2 minutes tops to go through that, is that it's essentially capturing that value change of money, which is what we talked about at the beginning. So
value change of money?
Yeah. So $1 now is not worth what $1 is in 10 years' time.
Yep.
And so the problem is because that price of the property changes, they think they do well.
Yep.
Now they might, and maybe you can. And maybe that's all you need to do is just simply put your flag in the ground, grab any property that you drive past that you want to buy, and in 30 years you'll probably be totally fine and do well. But do you want to just be caught up with the market and like sort of the catch-all, or do you want to outperform it? Because you want to outperform it and you need those properties to do something for you.
Yeah.
You need to have more thought in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what's the overall long-term strategy? Where am I going to be in 20 years? Like if I think the pilot, there's a pilot that, had his portfolio and he wanted a specific strategy for a specific reason.
That's right. Yeah, and look, sometimes it's hard to know that, but I mean, at least you know more than nothing. You can know that, hey,
Yeah.
I'm really focused on the growth of this property.
Yeah.
Or I'm really focused on the rent return or whatever. And it can be two different sort of purchases.
That's good.
interesting. I like that one, the wealth effect. There you go.
Yeah. All right.
Good.
What's next?
Did you have any questions from that? Are you still
No.
processing too?
No, I processed a long time ago. Don't worry. You're a little bit behind the schedule.
I just like to say someone's been a bit slack on lunch today because nothing here.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, honestly.
who's...
What is it?
I love how we all look at me.
Yeah. Like,
I didn't. I looked at Gabe.
Gabe side-eyed me.
kombucha lunch. Thanks, Anna.
Mm.
What are you trying to say? I'm fat.
I'm on the full
Right.
sugar diet.
Okay, so
No, what?
Yeah.
Mrs. walks in the door, says I'm on meat only, drinks a Coke.
are we doing this one?
Yeah,
So
that's
this
number
next
2.
2 minutes one, all right.
Yeah, if you see us, let's have a
G'day. Today I want to talk to you about mining towns. Many years ago, I was driving in my car and I got a call from a potential client. And he was a young fella and he says, I want to buy in a mining town. He lived in New South Wales. And I said, sure. How many properties do you own already? And he says, none. This is going to be my first property and it's going to be my first investment property. And I said, yeah, no, sorry, can't help you. Now, the reason I said that is because mining town investment is pretty volatile. If you live and work in a mining town, you get to know the area. That's a big advantage, and there's some people made a lot of money about doing that, right? Living in there, making it from their wage, of course, but also knowing the market locally and what have you. The issue we have with mining towns is that the price of the property is a lot more aligned with commercial pricing, and by that it means that it is aligned with the rental return. So, for an example, if the property is rented at, say, $1,000 a week, well, that's going to give a price point of, say, $1 million for that property, right? Like, just pull a figure out of the hair. Now, the issue with that is that the property price is then pegged to the rent. So if the mining town sort of has a slump or goes bust or whatever, and that property price drops to, say, $100 a week, well, then all of a sudden that property is going to be worth $100,000, right? Because you would have bought it on the yield of the property. Now, those figures are completely false in terms of what's actually out there available to buy right now, but the principle is totally accurate. Whatever price you buy your property on based on the rent is the price it will always be in a mining town. So when that rental price drops, your property price drops substantially as well in exactly the same percentage as the rental price. And that's something you need to remember. I'm Scotty North, and this is 2 Minutes Tops.
Wow. That guy rabbits on, doesn't he? All right, what do you want to know about that one?
Oh, Gabe, what's your question? What do you want to know about it?
Well, it's more so a statement. Don't buy in a mining town.
No, well, a lot of people have made good money in mining towns. I mean, there's no argument there.
My
Sure they
assumption
have,
was
but-
that I would assume the assumption out there would be that you could make good money investing in a mining town,
But
just
here's the
purely
question.
because they're making such a high income and they're all.
Sure,
why is that assumption?
but the market in a mining town isn't like the regular property market.
No, well,
Yeah,
It's
that's-
subject to change.
But the question is, what is a regular property market? I mean, there's not one property market in Australia, right? Like, I mean, it's all over the place.
No, but there are some more accurate than others.
Sure.
And there are a lot more similarities in certain places, right? Like Sydney might be similar to Melbourne, as opposed to the Sunshine Coast might be more similar to Gympie at this current time, right?
I think the two things that I was trying to get across in that one, because, you know, I only got 120 seconds, is that one, should you buy in mining towns because they're risky? And if you do, it shouldn't be your only investment property, especially if you're buying and you don't live locally and don't know the town.
Yeah.
And two, you need to know what you're buying. The fact that the pricing of the property is pegged to the rent and really cemented against it is something that residential property investors are not at all familiar with. And when I say residential, it's because in commercial terms, that's normally what it is. You got yields and cap rates and what have you, and that's how the properties are kind of priced and or sold and bought. However, in a mining town, in those examples, if you were getting, so let's say if you used a normal 5% yield in a decent area, it's not as high anymore, but say Southeast Queensland was always 5% yield. So it was like $1 for 1,000. if you had a $600,000 property, it was like $600 a week,
Sure.
right? But in a mining town, that would be $1,200 a week. Would give you a $600,000 price point because it's 10%.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The problem is, you go, that's really cool. Why would I buy on the Sunshine Coast to get $600 a week when I could buy in Moranbah and get $1,200 a week, and I'm spending the same amount of money?
Mhm.
Well, the problem is that when it comes off the boil, the town comes off the boil, and then that drops back to $600 a week, say.
Sure.
That is on the Sunshine Coast. Your property price is dropping to $300,000.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've just lost 300 grand.
You've lost 300 grand, and that's the problem with the mining towns.
Yeah. It's
And-
the volatility. Is that a word?
Yeah, and as I said, there's a lot of people made a lot of money, and a lot of them are either they specialise in it as investors, that they've really done their research,
Sure.
or they're high income earners that fly in, fly out, or live in the towns,
Yeah.
and they know the towns.
Yeah.
And so they really, but for a normal person who doesn't have a huge amount of time and doesn't want to specialise in a completely unique market,
Mm.
they're a pretty hard ask.
Yeah.
And then it's probably also, I don't know, indicative of what is happening. And like if all the mining jobs get shut down, or they decide to not be mining for a period of time, then you would assume, what, do the prices drop or do they increase?
No,
There's more vacant houses.
there's
then,
more
yeah?
vacant houses, so rents drop, therefore prices drop.
Mm.
And all those suburbs, I mean, the places it's predominantly WA and Queensland, because they're sort of the big two mining areas, states. And then there's other things like, I know in one of the suburbs in Queensland, the mines were renting out all the private homes, and they said, this is too expensive, so now we're going to get this was about 10 plus years ago, a home builder in and just built a whole bunch of cheap homes,
Yeah.
and they just withdrew all their rents from the market
Sure.
because they worked out over this time.
It's cheaper to do it.
Yeah, so let's think about it. Like, if it was on a 10% rate, right?
Yeah.
So that would effectively mean that in 10 years, the mining company has paid for the property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they just looked at it and said, well, if this property lasts us 15, 20, 25 years, those next 5 to 15 years, or whatever, how long the property lasts, it could be another 20 years.
Mm.
We're ahead. It costs us, apart from regular maintenance, it doesn't cost us anything. So we're miles ahead. And that's what they decided to do. And then some new guy gets in at the thing and goes, oh, we don't want to do homes, we want to do dongers. And then, oh, we want to go back to the property market. Like, it's all over the place because the next person who's in charge comes in to make their footprint and what they do, and they change stuff.
Yeah.
They did that in Moranbah, didn't they? The new estates.
They did.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were quite nice, but I don't think they are now. 10 years
So I
ago.
suppose at the end of the day, most mining towns are quite rural places. They're not like,
It's-
on the beach, not the Gold Coast.
No, they're not.
So therefore, it's kind of like you do have to take into consideration the fact that, those mining towns are probably not the most desirable place to live. Most people are not going to flock there, so therefore it's not going to increase so much. So therefore, the draw card is the mine. And, like BHP have shut down a few sites and that recently over the recent years. And you think, oh, yeah, well, BHP, they're great, they're absolutely guaranteed. And, and even those guys are shutting down mines, right? So
Yeah.
all the people that bought around there because they bought or invested because of BHP are now sitting there going, oh, hang on a minute. Our $1 million donger is now worth 200 grand.
That's right.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of points there that I want to touch on, and that is that mining towns are generally just that. So when you look at from an investment perspective, you want kind of at least 3 industries.
Yeah.
So you could have tourism, normal commerce business like general
Sure.
business, and maybe like cattle, or you can have cattle, ag, mining, whatever, right? So it was something else, right? So you want some sort of cross section there.
What'd you say? 3,
3 is preferable.
if not more.
Yeah, and look, you go to a capital city, you don't even need to count, right?
No.
It is what it is.
No.
So if you're talking those regional towns,
Yeah.
you can have really strong agriculture, and maybe it's all agriculture, but maybe it is multiple streams of agriculture.
Sure.
So, but when you go to mining, it's really just mining.
Yeah.
And most of them are really just one type of mining in that specific area. So
Yeah.
whether it's coal or whatever else they're doing at the time.
Mm.
And because the mines are so big, they don't really have, even like agriculture, multiple products coming out of the one thing. It's like, that's a coal mine. So that's a coal mining town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then they're really kind of pegged to that. And so
Yeah.
that's something that doesn't fit a normal, well-rounded I guess DD for your purchase, which is why straight away they become into a high risk category for purchase.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be your only investment property. You should be knowledgeable and skilled.
DD, due diligence.
Due diligence.
But then here's another issue with mining towns as well. If they are subject to whether there's actually stuff going on there, like, you know, people are going to live in mining towns, your rent's going to go up, your house price is going to go up. The second they move out, it drops. So then what happens if Australia stops selling? When you invest in a mining town, you're basing it off the hypothesis that Australia is going to keep selling coal from that mine. That mine's going to still be making money.
Yeah.
What happens if Australia stops its trade?
Well, I mean, then they're the complete mercy of everything. I mean, so that's why there's a lot of. It's not a general property market; it's a specific property market, and that's part of the issue. The other thing that you need to be careful of with these type of purchases is not just looking at the industry there, but I think one of you said before, like, you know, who wants to live there. So there's 3 types of criteria. 3, your good things come in threes. I guess 3 of you, I guess. I don't know, that's a good thing.
There's 4 of us here.
Well, not me. Like I'm almost off the screen.
He's special.
But what the things is that who wants to be there, who needs to be there, and who can be there.
Yeah.
Right? So those are the 3 things in those areas, right? So when you look at a mining town, who wants to be there? Well, probably depending. I've been to some mining towns and no one really wants to be there, right?
Yeah.
So who needs to be there?
Health.
Sure.
Right? Well, who needs to be there is miners.
Yep.
Miners, people working, yeah.
Okay? And so who can afford to be there? Well, kind of only the miners. So if you take away the miners, then 2 of your pillars are gone because no one else can really afford to be there and they don't really want to be there.
Well, technically all your pillars are gone because no one wants to be there.
That's right.
Well, what about people that move there knowing that there is a heap of miners living, like we'll just use Moranbah for an example. You've got a heap of miners living in there. You know they're on a high income. So you've got, I don't know, we could say you've got naturopaths or you've got mechanics that decide to move there because they know there's a lack of that there. There's also that side to it too. But as soon as the mining's gone, then they're gone.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
So there's other support industries that can be based around it, but it's still going back to the original industry.
Yeah.
So in a capital city, you know, like even if a big company like, you know, Suncorp Bank closes down in Brisbane, there'd be a lot of people out of work and what have you, but as a percentage and whatever, the majority of us wouldn't even notice.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas you go to a mining town and then like they go, oh, we're going to put the mine on ice, so to speak, for a while, then the whole town ceases to virtually
Yeah, it just stops.
Yeah.
Which is quite a scary thing for a lot of people that do live there and offer their services to not take advantage of the fact that there's miners living there, but they go, these guys have lots of money so I can charge more for my services in this area.
Well, these guys are funding the lives of the people living there, really, if you think about it, because if the miners weren't there, they wouldn't have money coming in.
So if you look at something like Townsville, which isn't really a mining town in Queensland,
Well, not anymore.
but it's highly cyclical as well. So it's got a big Air Force base up there. So it has tourism, it has agriculture, it has Air Force, and right. And it still goes up and down like this, depending on the announcements from the Air Force. They're expanding the base, they're doing this and that, you know, and that is a town that doesn't necessarily, it can meet the 3 pillars sort of concept, and it's still like this. And you're talking about other towns which don't come close to meeting the 3 pillars concept, and it's just like, you know, whatever. But the problem is it's about the time point, and you don't always know that. So if you get into a mining town when it's going well and then you get out before it goes bad, you're a champion.
Yeah.
Right? The thing is, do you want to be a speculator and a trader in that way, or do you want to be an investor that looks at the more fundamentals and say, I'll take the lower portion of risk. It may be a lower return, but I'm more certain of my outcome.
Yeah, and the value of your property is going to be more stable or less volatile.
More predictable.
Yeah, more predictable, Yeah, so I think because a lot of things, mining towns, people think, oh, you know, you can buy a house there for like $1.5 million. And you think, well, that's in the middle of nowhere. Or how on earth, why is someone paying that much money for a house like that when you can get a riverfront for that or something like that? You know?
My mum purchased a place in Moranbah for $200,000 a couple of years ago. And she's done it up, and it looks mint, but she's also in that volatility zone. So, because she's a naturopath, if like you just exactly what you said, her business ceases to exist, and that has happened.
Yeah.
That has happened. It can go even, I think there's particular times throughout the year that they shut down for.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they need to clean it, right?
Yeah.
No one cleans, they will drive trucks and stuff.
So she's got to prepare for that, for when that
Nice.
happens. But she needs to have local understanding and knowledge to be able to prep for that.
Yeah. And it's kind of like a forced holiday. And I suppose if, like, for instance, if that business stops, that's one issue. But the other issue is well, I've got a property here that now I owe more money on than it's worth.
Well, that's a big issue.
And
Yeah,
now
that's
you're stuck there, right?
Yeah, and the underwater, and you never sell it.
No.
Like, you'll never sell it till it becomes popular again, and whenever the next end, you don't have any control over that.
No.
Yeah.
And look, at the end of the day, when you invest in a mining town, you're not there, right? You don't have the knowledge that the town knows, like when the mines will shut down, when this will happen, this. If you want to buy in a mining town, you should know that before you get into it.
Yeah.
If you want the least risk without getting burnt, you will want to at least go and learn a little bit from at least the locals too before you even
Yeah,
invest.
well, local knowledge is important, yeah.
Well, there's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah.
Mining town.
Oh,
Mining
well,
towns. Oh.
Oh, it took us.
Oh, hello, whoever said hello to us, by the
hello,
way.
Facebook user, yeah. Must
Right.
be someone in the group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, drop them in before we
That's right.
jump off.
Well, we can answer them next time.
Yeah.
Hopefully next time, if you invite me to a lunchtime live,
We've got
someone
lunch.
might give me some food because, you know.
We can, but we all mutually agree that no, we can hold out for this.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I don't know if I'm usually agreeing
I'm
to
gonna
that.
start
He's
recording
already
what
had
you
his
think.
ice cream.
Oh,
So he
hang
doesn't
on.
need to
We don't
worry.
want. Hang on.
No.
Whoa.
I might be ashamed.
All right. Okay.
He's had enough.
This
He's
is-
getting
I think we're gonna have to
He's
end
copping
this
it.
now.
Yeah.
All right. So that's it. Everyone all good?
Bon voyage.
Bye.
Bye.